Okay.
All right.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Okay. My name is Kaylar, Michaelian. I live in Sydney. I'm married, two children. Eldest son is 36. Unfortunately, he's given us a beautiful young grandson, Monte. My daughter is also recently married about a year ago. We've been living in Sydney. I've been living in Sydney since 1975. I arrived with my parents in 1975, and been living in Sydney since then. I was born in Iran, in Juffa, Isfahan, and went to India at the age of 8. Was sent by my parents to the Armenian College in Calcutta, where I studied for 10 years in a boarding school. Very important years in my life, in my formative years. I'm very, very grateful for that opportunity because it really did shape my approach to Armenian issues, Armenianism, everything that is Armenian. So I have had some wonderful teachers who've had some incredible influences on me. But at the same time, I was also very grateful to be taught by Indian teachers. And I love the Indian philosophy and the Indian approach to life as well. So that Indian culture has also had an impact on my thinking, my philosophy to life, etc. After arriving in Australia in 1975 with my parents, after studying for a year and a half at school again, I ended up at university, studied engineering, worked a number of years after the studies. Never liked engineering that much. However, I always had a passion for teaching, despite my desire to become a teacher. My uncles in the US very strongly discouraged me from taking on teaching. Their thoughts were that I was not going to be able to support a family on a teacher's salary. Anyway, ended up after a number of years going back and studying teaching, started working at the St. Gregory's Armenian School, which was a Catholic school in Sydney for a number of years. And then an opportunity came up at the Hamaskain Arshak and Sophie Golson School for a deputy principal's position. And in 1998, I took on that position. A year and a half later, I took on the responsibility of principal and stayed at the school to the year 2010. So that's a very brief overview of an introduction to Kaylar Michaelian in Sydney.
That's an amazing story. And I'd love to start by talking about how your family ended up in Iran and then how you ended up in India. I know we talked a little bit before about your family history, but could you please explain what you know about the generations before you?
Sure. So, as most people would know, the Iranian Armenian community, in the main, en masse, was established around 1600 when Shah Abbas, the ruler of Iran, in the wars against the Ottomans, was actually retreating from Armenia back into Iran, and he decided that he was going to take with him the Armenian population of the area back to Iran. Two reasons. One, he knew that the Armenians could actually end up being very useful for the development of Iran. They were hardworking people. They were also farmers, tradespeople, and even in those days, even professionals, as in doctors, etc. So his aim was to bring the people, but at the same time, it was not to allow the Ottoman armies to have the resources, food and other materials to be able to advance much further into Iran itself. So my family actually, we've traced the origins of my family to Hadrut in Artsakh. And we can go back to my ancestors to about 1585. And I'm very fortunate that I've got the lineage going all the way back to that ancestor in 1585. We ended up in Iran. My family were actually farmers. Shah Abbas ended up allocating land to the Armenians so they could farm and establish their villages. My family established a village in the Peria region, they call it, Feredan region of Iran, near Isfahan. They established a village which was called Namagir, and my family's been living there ever since. So my father was born in the village. I was born in Isfahan in Iran, in Julfa, but spent the first couple of years of my life in the village with my parents. My mother actually comes from Tehran. Her family history I'm not as familiar with, but I know that they actually came from Russian Armenia or Eastern Armenia many years earlier. But I can't trace my mother's lineage back as far as I can with my father's. So yeah, I grew up originally in Isfahan. My father was working in a city called Karaj, next to Tehran. We went and established ourselves there. I was around about 6 when that happened. And at the age of 8, my parents decided to send me to Calcutta in India, to the Armenian College in India for studies. So at the age of 8, I was shipped off to a boarding school, and I loved 10 years of studying there, as I said earlier, for all the different reasons, but mainly because I don't think I'd be the person, as far as the love for Armenia and Armenians is concerned, if I hadn't attended that school. That was basically my family's history. My grandfather and grandmother ended up also coming to Australia many years later, and God bless their souls. They lived a number of years with their family here, and they even passed away in Sydney, Australia. So that's basically the family history.
That's incredible that you can trace it all the way back that many years.
I think that's very fortunate, and it's something that I feel has been taken away, stolen, especially from Western Armenian generations with the genocide. Mm-hmm. The genocide not only took away the land that they had lived on for millennia, they were the original inhabitants, but also took away their connection with their own family histories. Very few Western Armenians today can trace much past their great grandparents, and to me that is such a treasure that has been stolen. Yeah.
Let's talk about your time in India, because you said that it really shaped your perspective and love for the Armenian culture. So what was unique about the Armenian community in Kolkata?
When we were there wasn't a big community. It was a fairly small community. I think at best, the Armenian community in India would have not been much more in numbers than around 5,000. However, the Armenian history in India is such a rich history. It's an incredible history, which unfortunately isn't that well known. The Armenian merchants of India, I know there have been some studies done, have established so many firsts, world firsts, right throughout the world in commerce. They were incredible merchants who basically traded all the way from China to Europe and had incredible success as traders and built massive riches in India. They established churches, and they even established a particular school that I went to with the view that future generations would be kept Armenian in India as well. To me, the school itself, my teachers were mainly priests, bishops. We had our principal, who was a very, very patriotic Armenian. I grew up in that environment. And also, I think my Indian teachers also gave me so much. Indian culture is such an ancient culture, very much like our own. And their values and their approach to life gave me another perspective that I don't think I would have had I not attended that school.
Was it a predominantly like Armenian speaking school?
Okay, so the school itself followed the curriculum which was actually established by the British, and it was very much a British system run by the Indian government. However, we had the privilege of studying the Armenian language, Armenian religion, Armenian history. So out of our daily, if I remember correctly now, I think we had 8 periods of study a day. Out of those, 2 of them were Armenian, or history, religion. We were also taught classical Armenian, which is Grapa, which is the language of the church. So very few people have had that wonderful opportunity, but we did. So to me, that was a gift that I carry with great joy and pride to this day.
Do you still keep in touch with any of your classmates?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. We, right throughout the world, many students, friends, we keep in touch. We wish each other happy birthday, etc. It's a close knit community, and we do keep in touch right around the world. We've got people in Iran, people in Europe, many in the US, in Armenia itself, throughout the world, just like every other Armenian community. There's one of us, even South America, a number of in South America. So yeah, we do keep in touch.
That's very cool. Very cool. And then when you completed high school in India, where did you go from there?
So my parents, I was planning on studying in the US, and had secured a scholarship through the AGBU at the time to study in the US, Northwestern University in Chicago, I think it is still, many years ago. But when my parents came to India, just prior, they were heading to Australia and I was heading to the US. I just felt that I had missed so much by not being with them for that long. My father, having really been quite wise, had also prepared my papers to come to Australia with them. So I kind of put aside studying in the US and came over to Australia with them. As I said, went to school for 1.5 years, ended up at university, did an engineering degree, worked a number of years, and then went back into teaching, and then ended up as a deputy in one of the schools, and then as a deputy and a principal at the Michaelian School for nearly 13 years. Yeah.
Wow. Did you come straight to Sydney when you came to
Yes,
Australia?
we did come to Sydney. We had family here. My aunts, a couple of my aunties were in Australia. So when we came, we joined them and slowly established ourselves in Sydney.
What was the Armenian community like in Sydney when you first came?
It was a much smaller community. I would say at the time, nowadays we estimate there's around about between 50 and 60,000 Armenians.
Wow.
In Australia, probably around about 50,000 in Sydney. At the time, I think we had about probably between 10 and 15,000. But it was a very close-knit community. There was a lot of work going on in establishing the community. It was still fairly new. Australian migration to Australia by Armenians en masse actually started in the mid-60s. So it was around about 10 years after that we arrived. It was still very much in its infancy. There was a lot of work going on in establishing the clubs, the church. The church was there, but establishing the structures for the community. And to the credit of the community then and the leaders, an immense amount of work went into establishing the community. So when we came, it was still in this formative state. Schools had not yet been, day schools had not been established. There was only Saturday schools. Even the church was in its formative stage. So yeah, been through all that, and been a part of it as well.
Wow. So, did you you went to university in Sydney, right?
Correct.
Which university did you go to?
I started at Sydney University, and then I ended up finishing my studies at it was called the New South Wales Institute of Technology at that time. And then later on, I went to Macquarie University for my teaching. Yeah.
And so you worked in engineering out of undergrad.
Yes.
And then what was that like?
Yeah, it was interesting, but my heart, as I said, my heart wasn't in engineering as such. But I worked with a number of companies, but I always had my thoughts I should get back to teaching. So, and then I ended up working as a civil engineer for a while with an Armenian company. Yeah, it was just, but my focus and my desire was always to get to the teaching. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk more about your time in teaching then. You said that when you came, the day schools hadn't yet been established.
Correct.
So when was it that they started to become established, and where did you come in your role as principal and your other roles in the schools?
So there were Saturday schools at the time, a number of Saturday schools. And while I was at university, I started teaching at the Saturday schools while I was still studying.
Was that a volunteer role?
It was volunteer.
Okay.
It was very much a volunteer role. When we came to Australia, there were no schools as such in terms of day schools. We had a number of Saturday schools, and it was quite a chore getting all the students there on Saturdays because there was no transport, etc. People used to gather children in their own personal cars and take them to schools. That's how the community was being established at the time. In 1985, the first Armenian school, which was an Armenian Catholic school, was established, St. Gregory's Armenian School, out in the West. And then the following year, Hamaskain Archak and Sophie Golston School
was established, and if I'm not wrong, a couple of years later, the Alexander, AGBU's Alexander School, primary school, was also established. Unfortunately, we lost the Armenian Catholic School a few years ago. Sadly, a big loss for the community, but unfortunately it became unsustainable. And we currently have two day schools, the Hamaskain Archak and Sophie Goldson School, which is a kindergarten to year 12 school. And we have the Alexander, AGBU's Alexander School, which is a primary school, which is kindergarten to year 6. So those are the two schools. My involvement with the schools began when I was a student at university. I started teaching at the Saturday school, Turkmenchat Saturday School, which was Hamaskain's school in Willoughby, and was very fortunate to have the opportunity to teach young, up-and-coming leaders of our community at the time. I think when I mentioned you wanted me to mention this one. One of them was actually Gladys Berejiklian, who later on became the premier of, which I think in US terms is the governor of the state of New South Wales. A phenomenal figure. She has done so much for this state. Not only pride for the Armenians, but I think a lot of Australians are extremely proud of what she has done and what she has achieved. Unfortunately, a few years ago, she quit her job, and today she still is very much within the community. We meet her or bump into her fairly often at different Armenian functions, but it's been an honor and an absolute privilege to have known her and what she has actually been able to achieve, not for us just as Armenians, but as an Australian. She has brought a lot of pride to the Armenian community for what she's done. So that was Saturday schools. They continue to this day. If I'm not wrong, we have 4 Saturday schools. One is the AGBU Alec Manukyan School. We've got one in Western Sydney, which is the Sero Papazian School. We have Turkmenchats continuing in the Willoughby area. And we have the Tumanian School, which teaches in the Eastern Armenian dialect in Ryde. So those are the 4 schools, and then we've got the Alexander School, as I said, as a primary school, 5 days a week, and then the Hamaskain School, which is also a K-12 school. So my involvement with the schools started at university, and then once I had decided to go into the schools, I started work at the St. Gregory's Armenian School in Rouse Hill. It's a suburb in the west of Sydney. It was established by a Catholic priest, Father Anton Totonjian. He invited me to go and work with him. I worked for, I think, around about 4 years at that school. And then in 1998, correct, that's right, in 1994 is when I went, and then in 1998 I was invited to go over to the Hamaskain Goldson School, which I did as a deputy principal, and within 2 years the principal moved on and I took on the responsibility of principal, and I was there for 13 years. I finished teaching and my role in the schools in 2010.
Wow. And then when you moved on in 2010, what did you end up doing with your career?
To be quite honest, I was looking at what to do. I think I had by that time enough of schools. I've said this many times, I'll repeat it here as well. It was definitely a 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year job. I loved and I still love my interactions with the kids, with the students. And I've said many a time, I learned a lot more than I taught them from them. And the relationships that I have and cherish to this day with my ex-students have been the greatest satisfaction that I've had from that part of my career. However, the other side of it is being a community school and having to deal with the parents and the politics. I can see your smile on your face. That really was demanding, and it took quite a toll. Following that, I've basically since then worked with High Court Property Group, which was established by a very good friend of mine, Michaelian, and I basically have been at this place for the past 14 odd years, taking on a number of roles, and started off as a very small company when I joined. It is today a massive operation, and to the credit of the boys, that Michael's sons, it is growing incredibly quickly, and to their credit, it's just a massive company now. But I still continue to assist wherever I can.
Very cool. Yeah. I think it definitely speaks to the impact that the Armenian community has had on Sydney, which you've been able to witness at every stage in your career.
Yeah, I have been very fortunate in that my connections with the Armenian community have been there from day one. While a student, I also joined the Armenian National Committee, worked with them for a number of years. In 2015, I was given the great honor of representing Artsakh in Australia. Have loved that job. However, it's been a very bittersweet experience with that one, as most of us know. I've made some incredibly wonderful friends in Artsakh and continue to have them. One of the greatest tragedies right at this moment is virtually all our hostage prisoners in Baku are people that I know. I consider them as my friends. They are from President Bako Sahakian to Arkady Ghukasyan, David Babayan I've worked with very, very closely. Levon Mnatsakanian I know, had many opportunities to meet with him. Tavit Ishkhanian is a very special person for me. He's really closer than a brother to me, and to this day I'm still not very comfortable and talking about it. It weighs very heavily on my heart, where so many of these wonderful, wonderful patriots are today being treated in a way that's totally, totally unacceptable in anywhere in a civilized world. But anyway, however, my role, and to this day I continue that role in a very different form, trying very hard with our community to draw attention to the cause of these people. And we have made some inroads, but I just pray that sooner rather than later these people are given their dignity to return to their families and to their loved ones.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for all the work that you do for the Aussie community, the Aussie Armenian community, and the community in Artsakh as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about your family in Sydney. So you came here to live with your parents,
Sure.
and you said that you had some relatives in Sydney as well,
Sure.
like aunts and uncles and cousins. What other relatives do you have in Sydney? And maybe you could talk about your children as well.
Okay. I've Yeah, I've got a fairly large family in Sydney. My father was one of 11 children, and he was the eldest. Four of my aunts also migrated to Sydney with their families and their children. So I've got a number of cousins. I think we number about 15 of my cousins, and with their families and children are also in Sydney. We catch up fairly regularly. I've got two sisters. They've got their own families and now grandchildren as well. And we're very close. We get together very often. My wife's side is also a large family. She was one of six sisters and one brother, and they all migrated to Australia. So their families are also. So when I think if we all get together, there's at least 150 or so of us. So we try and keep those family traditions going. My wife is Armenian Catholic, so we celebrate Christmas on the 25th with her side of the family. Then on the 5th and the 6th, it's the Armenian Apostolic one. So we try and keep the Western Armenian traditions, the Eastern Armenian traditions from my side, the Iranian Armenian traditions from my side. We try and hold on to those traditions because both of us feel very strongly that those are important things to keep. I've got two children. My son is 36. He's a lawyer. He's now got a young 3-year-old who is our absolute joy. It's a day doesn't go past where my wife and I don't miss him. We see him every week. He's with us on Fridays with my wife and I. We look after him for the whole day, but we just can't get enough of him. My daughter is 29. She is a teacher. She teaches science and biology at a fairly large school. She married about 1.5 years ago, and she and her husband he's an engineer, she's a teacher. They're trying to get themselves established in Sydney as well. It's very difficult for young people in Sydney, but they're working hard to buy their own property and establish themselves. And I'm sure they will. And God willing, we might see another grandchild coming our way soon. So that's my family. But to us, to my wife and I, we keep reminding our children and now our grandchild that family is everything, as is the case with most Armenian families. We've always kept ourselves, our identity through our families and through traditions, and that's why I feel every time we meet an Armenian outside anywhere in the world, as Sarayan says, we just feel that connection because it is the same connection we feel amongst our own families. So that's it.
Very nice, very nice.
Thank you.
You've had a lot of different roles in the Armenian community, and you've done a great service to the Armenian community in Sydney. And I was wondering if you could talk about what your hopes are or your goals are for the future of the Armenian community in Australia.
I think my hopes, first and foremost, is that whatever we have, we're able to hold on to, and also to enhance and actually grow what we have. Those are my hopes. My hopes are that Armenian as a language in our community continues to be important, that the schools we have, we nurture them, we look after them, and we support them, because keeping the language and the culture through the schools, I think, is the key to the longevity of our community. Unfortunately, those are the hopes. Unfortunately, the realities of today. I don't want to sound pessimistic, but being realistic, I can see the dilution of our own identity in the West in particular. Originally, I was talking about my roots and my family in Iran. For nearly 500 years, my family very, very staunchly has kept their traditions, their identity in Iran. My grandmother could barely speak 2 words of Persian. She was born and lived in Iran for so many years, but because of the closeness of the Armenian community and the way they approach things, they kept very much all that was important in terms of Armenianness for them. Now, I'm not saying that that's the extent that we should be going, but what I believe is we have to realize that it is important to hold on to those values, to those traditions, to those, to the language in particular. Some people say it doesn't matter whether you can speak Armenian or not. And I understand some people don't have that opportunity. But myself, having studied the Armenian language and knowing the treasures that are held within this language, I can't imagine anyone appreciating their own culture and understanding their own culture if they're not able to read the language and to read the poets, starting from times immemorial to today. I enjoy reading that very much, and I see the value in it. So hopes are hoping and praying that we continue as a community to grow and keep our establishments alive. My fears are we're fighting a major, major battle, and it's not unique to Sydney or Australia. I'm sure the US has the same issues that they're grappling with. Europe was, unfortunately, the Middle East these days is slowly becoming less an inviting place for Armenians in the region, and they're leaving in massive numbers. But my hope and prayer is, if we've been able to keep ourselves through having put up with so much tragedy, so much in terms of adversities in our lives for so many centuries, I think we'll overcome this one as well.
And what would you say is your definition of Armenian identity? Like, what does being Armenian mean to you?
Okay, good question. Basically, I don't think there's anything, any secret to it. I think being Armenian means loving, and I mean in the true sense of the word, loving everything that is connected with Armenia and Armenians. To me, being Armenian means loving Armenia unconditionally, just like our own child, and being prepared to commit to Armenia in any form that you can. Being Armenian means loving every Armenian. When you meet someone anywhere in the world, and if they're Armenian, just feeling that absolute connection with them. So to me, the definition of being an Armenian is love for everything Armenian and Armenians.